When it comes to Japanese content and how I always say, my hope is like a tennis ball getting hit back and forth between two sides, it truly is. Where one side you had what I just did videos on, Toei Animation planning to shift their content to resonate more with Westerners, and the new head of Final Fantasy focusing more on a global audience, making me think, why haven't they learned yet? Do they not understand the importance of cultural identity? But on the other side, there is light at the end of the tunnel with certain creators seeing the obvious. I am concerned, Kadokawa anime producer says. Japan needs to protect its unique style and calls for sustainable production. Finally, someone with some foresight to understand the value of what makes anime beyond just its signature art style. Kadokawa anime producers Takuya Yoshioka and Maki Mihara, owned by Kadokawa, about their experience working on My Happy Marriage and the series' global success. Personally, I love this anime, and it's the prime example of what I mean when I say the Japanese cultural identity along with their art style adds layers of escapism for me as a viewer. The fashion of the kimonos being worn, the environmental landscape of beautiful cherry blossoms blowing in the wind, the designs of architecture, the customs that are unique to that region, whether past or present. Everything that I'm unfamiliar with as a Westerner, all of this accumulates to a good experience. And I love getting a break from my own modern reality to be immersed in another, and honestly from where I live, it just gives me the break I need sometimes. They were asked for their thoughts on Japan's domestic and overseas expansion prospects, given the imports of Chinese, Korean anime into Japan. They were also asked what they thought about those countries' production capabilities catching up to Japan's. Yoshioka answered, "I believe that in any visual work, there are elements that can only be created based on the cultural background of the country or region and the values that have been cultivated over a long period of time, and that there is animation that can only be created with the sensibility and nature born in Japan. That is why I believe that it is the responsibility of video makers to protect the unique video expression method called anime, born in this country and its culture, protect and develop the production environment and functions, and continue to produce anime with the continuity so that people involved in anime can be properly enriched." Man, it is so refreshing to hear this, even though to me it's obvious that anime's cultural identity needs to be protected, but other Japanese creators just seem to overlook the value in that. And I love the fact that he owns it when he says anime, born in this country and its culture. Like, he gets it. He understands the value of maintaining that, because the art style can always be imitated, where at this point in time, everyone who damn near is an artist across the globe in any region basically makes anime-inspired character designs. That's how much of a global influence Japan has had. But what this producer is hinting at is that anime goes beyond just the look of the art. Sure, you can imitate anime character designs, but what you can't imitate are personal experiences that bleeds through the designs, sometimes subconsciously, where the artist doesn't even know how they came up with such designs, where their characters will take place, how they are written to interact with other characters through dialogue choice of different personalities, down to the most simplest and subtle expressions drawn in certain scenes that may reflect how someone felt in an instance in their own life. Maybe they drew scenery of somewhere they walked home from work one day, seeing a puddle somewhere in an unusual place, and a reflection born from the surface of that puddle inspired them somehow. Or saw a woman they couldn't take their eyes off, seeing their hair blow in the wind along with the cherry blossoms in the background. Cat cafes, ramen shops, something that is popular in Japan but would seem totally out of place where I'm from and wouldn't make sense. Characters that remove their shoes whenever entering a home, something of common practice in Japan but not so much a part of the culture here in America. Bowing out of respect, addressing people by their last name, and considered a big deal if you addressed them by their first. All of this can't be overlooked, and Yoshioka seems to realize that. Yes, you can imitate the Japanese art style, but what you can't imitate is the culture that underlies it and drives it to where it is today. That's what gives it its longevity. Knockoffs can't sustain on their own, but always reliant on what was created before. Yoshioka continued, "In that sense, I'm concerned that rather than many anime works being produced overseas and coming into Japan, as is the case with other industries, if things can be made overseas with cheap costs and labor, investment will be directed there, leading to the decline of domestic production capacity in industry. And that in Japan, where economic growth is stagnating, talented creators and human resources will flow overseas." And that's something I thought about too, how Japan is in a tough place with their population crisis. Low birth rates means less animators on their end, inevitably by default, which will lead to outsourcing talent with cheap cost and labor, something that can actually be applied throughout many industries across the world. But like I said, yes, you can hire someone in China or Korea to draw similarly to your own art, but the more you do that, little by little, that personal touch or personality will fade away from the art itself. Because when you work on something you have invested interest in that comes from your own inspiration that you're personally connected to, you'll apply the amount of effort, passion, and love that just cannot be quantified versus someone who is only working on something from receiving a check and told, here, just draw this character for this amount of frames doing this particular action, but has no knowledge of the story or inspiration behind the work, just this is my job that I'm getting paid for. That's it. You can even apply this concept to mom and pop shops versus major corporations where that personal customer service is lacking. But in a mom and pop shop, you feel familiar with the person you're buying from. There's a connection, a smile that can't be faked when you enter their business and they actually know you by your name. That's something that can't be taught in orientation, at least on the genuine level. You can't quantify genuine interaction versus forced responses because you just have to. Just like you can't quantify the personal connection an artist has with their work, their culture that bleeds through the page when you read it or on screen when you view it. To me personally, these things matter. Yoshioka also states, "I strongly feel that it is the time to reconsider the model of producing and consuming large amounts of work just for the next temporary sales and for companies with capital to come together and invest their capital properly, aiming for truly sustainable anime production. If the environment for anime production in Japan becomes more stable and is established on a solid foundation for growth, there is great potential for new expressions to emerge through the entry of overseas studios, and I think there are many positive elements for the development of animation," Yoshioka concluded. And in this article, they also explain bad working conditions that deter future animators from wanting a career in the industry. Low wages, long hours that on top of their population crisis adds more concern. And Japan is in like a paradox of some sort, with their low birth rates leads to less of their people consuming, which is why I guess certain studios are looking to appeal to that Western dollar. But the reason I say it's a paradox because the more they do that, the more they ruin the reason fans consume their content, which circles back to the importance this producer emphasized, that anime must maintain its cultural identity, and to me, that's paramount above all. Like I said, people can imitate the art style on a surface level, but they can't imitate the cultural touch that underlies and drives it. But that's all I have for this video. Tell me what you think in the comment section below. Like I said, shout out to Yoshioka. I love when Japanese creators fight to maintain their identity and their art, and it's important to me. I just wish more would realize that. And if you haven't already, check out my music on Spotify and YouTube, link in the description. If you love those Samurai Champloo lo-fi mellow boom bap vibes, then my music is definitely for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Free think. Peace.